Well, good evening, everybody, and a very warm welcome to all of you in today's session. Before I actually start with the agenda, first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Sanjeev Garg, and I have been working in the IT sector for the last 18 years in various capacities. Last few years, I have been working as a full-time trainer on PMP and Agile. So that's just very brief about myself. In today's session, as you can see, the PPT, we would be talking about how the estimation is actually done in the project, which are executed using Agile methodology, and what are the tools and techniques and methods, which are available to arrive at a a reasonable estimate. Now, before I actually start talking about things which are very, very specific to Agile, I think it is worth spending few moments talking about what we actually mean by estimation. Well, estimation, as a general terminology, estimation, it could be in the traditional project management also, it could be in Agile also, or it could be in rapid application development or waterfall model. Estimation, the definition of estimation is actually, in same, whichever flavor, you pick for executing your project. So what actually, we mean by estimation? Estimation is actually a projection, about something. It is a projection about something, and how do we project? We project based on the information which is available at that point of a time. So, and adding further, it is actually a probability and an approximation. Okay. When I say probability or approximation, why I'm basically using these two words, because when we kick off the project, when I get the business requirement document from the customer, at that point of time, we do not have clarity on lot of requirements. In fact, the customer himself is not very, very clear about the scope of the project. So assuming that there are some 30 requirements which I got from the customer, and I sit along with the business analyst, and I sit along with the subject matter expert, and then we find out that we need a lot of information from the business community, who are sitting at the customer location. But still, I need to give some number to the customer saying that we would be needing X amount of hours or X amount of money to complete this project. So that is the reason, why we say that estimation is always an approximation. So today, if I am saying that we would be able to deliver this project maybe, in X amount of dollars, let's say $100, and we are in the inception phase of the project. We have just started the project, and we have just the business requirement document from the customer. So we arrive at that number, we make certain assumptions, we keep some buffer, and then we tell to the customer that we would be needing X amount of money or X amount of resources or X amount of hours to complete the project. Now, as and when things unfold from inception, we go to the subsequent phases of the project, say requirement analysis, then we get into design, then we get into the construction phase. We come across a lot of information, we come across a lot of clarification from the customer, and at that point of time, the estimate which we had given in the beginning, maybe it was 10 hours, okay, and now it should not be 10 hours, maybe it should be 20 hours, okay. So in a nutshell, what I'm saying is that estimation, especially in the beginning of the project, it is always an approximation. It is always, a probability, and we arrive at that approximation based on the information which is available at that point of a time. Now, there are different, units available as to, how do we measure, like in your real life, you have various units, like you have tons, you have pounds, you have grams, you have millimeters, you have centimeters. So these are, some of the estimation units which we basically use in our daily life. Now, talking in the context of software development, we have two very popular units. The first one is called as lines of code, and the second one is called as, the functional point. Now, both these methods or both these, units we use in the traditional project management. Now, when I say traditional project management, it could be using, waterfall, or it could be using spiral, or it could be using incremental, or it could be using rapid application development methodology. So these two units we basically use while, we are executing a project on a traditional methodology. Another thing I want to, share at this point in time, that throughout this presentation, when I am using the word estimate, I am basically referring to the size. So if you can see here on this slide, when we say estimate, there are two dimensions. The first one is called as size, and the second one is called as duration. Okay, and as you can see on this slide, supposing there is a building, okay, say Dubai Tower, and then when the concerned people, when they approach the architect and to arrive at a number, arrive at a dollar value. So first of all, the architect, he needs to know what is the total size of the structure. Okay, and based on that total size, they arrive at the duration. Okay, so throughout this presentation, I am talking about only the size part. We are not talking about the duration part. I basically, thought of, mentioning it because during most of my sessions, whenever, I talk about estimate, most of the people think that it only means duration. Means when you have a requirement, you would be needing 10 hours to code that requirement. But they forget, the initial step. Before calculating the effort, you need to know what is the size of the requirement. Okay, so that's what I basically, thought of clarifying. Okay, so in traditional project management, as I said, that we have two measures. One is called as the lines of code, and second one is called as the function point. Okay, now when we talk about Agile, in Agile we have only two things, which are available to us for arriving at the size of the requirement. The first one is called as the story point, and the second one is called as, the ideal days. If you compare both the approaches in traditional project management, to arrive at a function point, you need expert. So there are people in the organization, maybe they have done some certification in doing the function point analysis, or maybe they know how to interpret the design document, or how to interpret the requirement document, and then they arrive at a function point number. And based on the technology, supposing if we are dealing with a project, and the project would be using maybe .NET or Java, there are some industry standards. Function point itself is a very time-consuming activity, rather it's a very complex activity. Whereas while we see the mechanism available in Agile, story point and ideal days are very, very simple and very, very straightforward. I mean, you don't need any what I should say, a special kind of a skill to arrive at that. Okay, these many story points are we need to build in a particular project. Now, what exactly we mean by story point? Now, while I was talking about the function point in traditional project management, function point or lines of code is a very objective analysis of the size of the system. It is based on some algorithm. It is based on some well-established mathematical rules. But while we talk about story points in Agile, it is not based on any algorithm. It is not based on any mathematical formula. It is something which is it is a arbitrary a measure, a number given to a requirement. Okay. So supposing if there are 10 requirements in my project, then I assign a number to each one of the requirements. So requirement number 1, I say, okay, the size of this requirement is 2. When I say requirement number 2, the size of the requirement is 5. Okay. Now it might be sounding very confusing. So I'd like to share one example here, that what exactly you mean by story point. Now, as you can see on your console, just assume that there is a sailor, okay, and this sailor, he is stranded in the middle of the ocean, okay. Now he has a binocular, and he wants to see some nearest island, and he uses his binocular, and he sees that there is an island, okay. But the problem is he doesn't know how far that island is. He doesn't know whether it will take him to arrive to reach that island 20 hours or 30 hours or 40 hours, or in the first place, what is the total distance? Means that island is 20 nautical miles from his boat or 40 nautical miles from his boat. He doesn't know that. So what he basically does, based on his experiences, because he's been sailing in the ocean for the last many years, he just uses his gut feel and he assigns a number to that distance, and he say, okay, it seems to me that it is 12 nautical miles away from the boat. Okay, now he uses his binocular again to see if there are some more islands. Now he sees a couple of more islands. Now what he will do, he will try to compare the first island with the second island. So it may be the case that the second island is double the distance of the first island, or second scenario could be that the second island is maybe half the distance of the first island. So what basically he is doing, that initially when he saw the first island, he just assigned a number to that island that it seems to me it is 12 nautical miles. Now while looking at the second island, he is using the first island as a baseline, and then he's comparing the second island with the first island and then giving it a number to the second island. So as you can see on the slide that the first island, he says, okay, it is 12 nautical miles. Second island is also 12 nautical miles, but the third island, which is further away from both the islands, he is saying it is 24 nautical miles. So what we are doing here, we are basically arriving at a distance, first of all, taking a baseline island, and then we calculate the distance of the remaining island in relation with the first island. It is called as relative sizing. So this number is actually called as a story point in Agile. As I told you, again I am saying this number is not based on any mathematical expression. There is no formula using which I can arrive at this number. Unlike function point or lines of code, wherein we derive the effort estimate from the function point. So supposing if a size of an application is 20 function points, then we have well-defined mathematical expression, and I can very easily say that 20 function points is equal to maybe 200 hours of man month effort. which is absolutely not the case while we are talking about story points in Agile. Okay, story points in Agile are basically used for some other purpose. What is that purpose? We would be, talking in details, not in this particular presentation, but in next session, which would be on 19th of April. But just for now, just understand that a story point is a number given to a requirement in relation with other requirements. There is another example given out here, as you can see on your console. Supposing we have a house, okay, which has bedroom number 1, bedroom number 2, and we have kitchen, and we have bathroom, and we have the living room, and then we are calling a painter, okay, and this painter, he has to paint the entire house. He comes to my house, and then he is going to all the bathrooms, okay, and now like if you see on your screen, say kitchen, he says that okay, it is 5 points, okay. Now if you see above, which is the living room, it is 13 points, so you can clearly say that it is bigger in size. If you are looking at the bathroom, which is 3 points, it is lesser than the kitchen, which is 5 points. Or if you look at another bathroom, which is 2 points, that's 2 points. It has to be small in size if you compare it with maybe kitchen, or maybe with some other room in the house. So in a nutshell, what basically we are saying, that the story point, when we are assigning a point to a requirement, first of all, we select one requirement, which is meaningful to everybody, which we understand thoroughly. And then all the development team, along with, the subject matter expert, they sit together and then they say, okay, let's give this requirement a story point number, which is 5. Now, anything which is having a 10-story point, any requirement which is having 10 story point, it has to be double in size, as compared to the story which is having 5-story point. So one factor, how hard it is, and it is actually a relative value. So if a login screen is having a story point 2, a search feature would be 8. Okay, so if a requirement, if it is sized at 2, anything which is sized at 4, it has to be double in complexity, if you compare it with a login screen which has been given a number 2. Okay, so it is just a arbitrary number given to the requirement. So if anybody has any query and or any question, you can type in the QA window, and I'll be responding to the same, because this particular concept is very, very important. The entire Agile methodology is actually based on this only. So if anybody is finding it difficult to understand it, he will be able to understand the subsequent topics. So as you can see, on the next slide, we have a different method of doing the estimation in Agile. Okay, I can give a number. I can give a number starting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 5. We can also use Fibonacci number 0, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, or we can also use a method which is given out there on the slide, I can see that this story point, sorry, this particular requirement is of medium size, or this particular requirement is of large size, or this particular requirement is of extra large size. So depending upon, which way, which method I'm comfortable, or which method, has a relevance to me, I can, use that particular method. So as you can see on the slide that, the point scale that indicates the size of a story relative to a baseline story. Now, in Agile, the requirements are called as user story. Okay, it's one and the same thing. It's just a different terminology. A different name is given to the requirement. In traditional project management, we call requirement. In Agile, we call those requirements as user story. So going forward, I would be using the term user story. When I say user story, you think I'm talking about requirement only. So sizing of user story is a key part of understanding the overall effort required to create a product release. Okay. So as I said in the beginning, that when we say estimate, it has two components. The first component is called as the size, and the second component is called as the effort duration. Okay. If I don't know the size, I cannot arrive at the effort. Okay. If I don't know the size of a book, if I don't know how many pages are there in the book, how would I know that it would take me, X amount of hours to complete the book based on my speed? If I am able to read maybe 10 pages in 2 minutes or 3 minutes, so I need to know first of all what are the total number of pages in a book. That is called as the size, and based on that size, based on my speed, I arrive at an effort. Okay. Using this method, developers or the development team, they are able to quickly, quickly able to size the requirement so that they can come up with a schedule. Okay, like in traditional project management, we have something called as Gantt charts. Gantt chart, it is a chart which we see in a scheduling tool called Microsoft Project. Okay, so that that plan that we would be delivering, the deliverable or the work packages to the customer on, on the different days. So that whole plan is called as a release plan in Agile. Okay, so using story points, we are able to quickly arrive at a plan, the plan which talks about the delivery schedule to the customer. And one very important aspect, about story point is, I mean, the development team, the people who are part of the project, they don't find sharing, the effort. If supposing you are going to a developer, and if you share a user story with him, if you share a requirement with him, and you say that, okay, I give you 10 minutes, and you tell me how long it will take me, how long it will take you to code this requirement. Now the developer, he goes through the requirement and he feels that he needs some clarification. So majority of the people, if they are not very, very clear about the requirement, if they think that they need some more information from the customer, they feel, they don't feel comfortable in sharing that, okay, for them it will take maybe 20 hours of effort or 40 hours of effort. They don't feel comfortable. But if I ask the same developer, just could you please give me what is the size of this requirement? This is the baseline requirement. So keeping in mind that this is the baseline requirement and the size of this baseline requirement is say 5 story point. Now I am giving you a new requirement. can you please tell me whether it should be 10 or it should be 20 or it should be 2 or it should be 40? So that way, he doesn't feel uncomfortable, okay, because you are asking him only about the size. Now, when he says that, okay, as per him, the size of that requirement or the user story should be 10, that 10 doesn't mean that it will take him, to complete that requirement, to code that requirement in 40 hours. As I said in the beginning, there is no mathematical formula. I mean, if I am saying that a particular requirement, if I am giving full story point to the requirement, I don't need 40 hours. It doesn't mean that I'll multiply 10 by 4 and I'll say that whosoever works on this requirement, maximum amount of time that would be given to him would be 40. So effort estimation is altogether a different thing. We are just talking about, size. So most of the developers, most of the people, they feel comfortable when you ask them about what is the size of this requirement. But if you ask them what is the total number of effort which is required to complete or code the requirement, they won't do that until and unless you give them all the information. And as I said in the beginning, that when we are in the inception phase, when we have just started the project, when we have only the business requirement document, where we have all the, it is very, very difficult to give the effort estimate. Now at that point of time, the best, method available is you just give each requirement a size based on your gut feel, based on your experience, based on your discussion with the subject matter expert. Okay, I can see one question, one query in the QA window. Visual estimation is easy compared to it. Development that non-IT folks are clueless. So how can they give the estimate? This query came from Satnam. Okay. Satnam, I'm really not able to interpret what exactly are you trying to ask? Or maybe you can type your question again. What exactly you mean by visual estimation? Satnam, are you there? Satnam, can you hear me? Okay. I'll unmute you. 1 second. Raj, are you there? Raj, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yes.
Raj, I need to unmute Satnam.
Sure. Just a minute. Yeah, Satnam, we have unmuted you. You can speak now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, no. Yeah,
okay,
I can
great.
hear you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I have been doing this, and the problem that we run into when I say visual, yeah, I can see, anybody can see the sizes of T-shirts or islands or some distance or whatever, or even a building for that matter. But when you talk about the story, user stories, the business team, they know what feature they want or what they want, the functionality they want. They have no clue what it will go into making that happen. right? So how can they say, oh, this is going to be a 20 or versus 2? How are they making that judgment? I mean, that's the difficulty that I have run into, is that I have in the team the product owner and the business stakeholders, as well as development teams, testers, and it seems to have been very hard for the business team to figure out how to size it. So
Okay.
any kind of guidance on that?
Yeah. Well, Safar, the first thing I would like to share with you that the business team they have given the requirement to the vendor. Okay. We have a product owner, we have a Scrum Master, and we have the Scrum team available with us. The first and the most important thing I would like to share that estimate, it always comes from the development team. The customer is not giving me the size of the user story. Customer job is done when he has given the requirement to me. Now it is my responsibility, as a team, to arrive at the estimate, to arrive at the size of the requirement or size of the user story.
So that was my question as to who is involved when you're doing the story points, because I was I have read and number of people have said that when you're doing the story points, the whole team is there, including the business people.
Yeah. Now, when you say the business people, the initial discussion which happens, like when we have just got the requirement from the customer. Okay, the first discussion it happens. I mean, the requirements are so vague that if I call all the development team people, I mean it won't serve the purpose. I need to have the initial discussion with the business people to arrive at some clarity on the requirement. Okay. Now the job of the business team is to give me the clarification on the requirement. Now once I have the clarification, once the product owner who sometimes or most of the time is from the business community, he is the person who understands the requirement. Now he sits along with the people when I say people, the people from the development team. Okay, and then a discussion happens out there. Brainstorming, happens out there. In fact, sometimes selecting a baseline user story, it becomes a mammoth task. Okay, because it's the first time we are going through the requirement, and if I'm not even able to pick up, the baseline user story. So yes, sometimes there are challenges. Despite having all the information from the customer, sometimes it is very, very difficult to arrive at a size. Okay. Now, the first point which I want to make clear, that sizing is actually done from the development team in consultation with the people from the business community. Now, when I say business community, I mean the product owner also. Okay. Now, this activity is not something which I would be able to do in 2 hours or 3 hours. Sometimes it takes the complete week to understand the requirement. Because until and unless I understand the requirement, how would I be able to size the requirement? Now, if I say it is a medium-sized requirement, or if I say that this user story or this requirement, if I am giving a number 20 is based on what? So, initial hiccups are always there. Selecting the baseline story is sometimes becomes a very, very challenging task. Okay, a lot of discussion happens with the people from the business community who are sitting at a customer location. But ultimately, the sizing is done from the development team only.
Okay. One more little bit of question. Do you do these sizing before beginning the project, or do you do for each sprint?
Okay. Now, there are basically 3 levels of basically planning which we do in Agile. We have daily planning, okay. We have iteration planning, or we have the release planning. Okay. Now, I'll talk in terms of traditional project management, so that the people who are very new to Agile, they should also be able to understand what I'm basically talking here. Now think for a moment, when you get the requirement from the customer, you get the business requirement document from the customer, okay, and the customer is giving me a 1 week of time, and he's saying that you come up with document of understanding, or you come up with the project charter, okay, and after 1 week you need to call for a meeting and you need to share the high level milestones with me. You need to share how many people you would be deploying onto the project. You would be sharing based on the information which we have shared with you. Do you see any risk? You need to share what are the constraints. You need to share what are the current issues. Now this entire activity, I have been given 1 week of time and I am the project manager. Okay. Now when I go through the business requirement document, okay, now business requirement document, 50% of the requirements are at a very high level, very, very abstract requirement, and I am not able to make any head or tail out of those requirements. Now what I do, I call for a meeting with the business people who are from the customer side, and I discuss with them about all the requirements, not in very detail, okay. I'm just trying to understand the high level functionality, that's all. I'm not trying to, jump deep inside the ocean and then try to understand each and every thread of the requirement. My only purpose at this point in time is to understand what this project is all about. Now this project, I need to deliver 10 requirements. I need to code 10 requirements. What is the meaning of those 10 requirements, so that my senior developer, they're in a position to tell me that the size of, all the requirement is 20 function point. 20 function point means maybe 100 hours. Okay. After 1 week, when we are giving the information to the customer, I'm talking about the inception phase. Now that estimate is called as ROM. ROM basically means rough order of magnitude. Okay. I'm not sure if you know this term. Now there are two kinds of estimate. There is one estimate which is given in the planning phase of the project. There is another estimate which is basically given to the customer once we are done with the design part. Once we have written down the low level design, okay, we know the requirement fully. So the estimate which was given in the beginning, just for a moment, just assume that the estimate was 100 hours. Now ROM, the estimate which was given in the planning phase, it can be 120 hours also, or it can be 80 hours also. So there is a range there. Why we have the range there? Because we do not have all the information available with us. Now when we have written down the low level design, that means we are very well aware about the nitty-gritty of all the requirements. So we revise the estimate. Same thing happens in Agile also. The sizing which we have done in the beginning, when I say beginning, we have just got the requirement of the user story, and I need to size all the user stories. I need to size all the requirements. Now the sizing which is given in the beginning, and while we are into the execution phase, it happens most of the time that those numbers are revised. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't think we are in this many process, because my client is sitting right next to me. I mean,
Okay.
and it is in the same like functional department, and
Okay.
so we don't have this formalized relationship.
Now,
Right.
well, basically, I shared with you, the high-level process. Okay. In a nutshell, what I'm basically trying to say, that the schedule or the estimate which is shared in the beginning with the customer, that always has a range. So if a number which is say 80 given to the customer, those 80 could be $80 also, or it could be 80 man-months also. So it might happen while while we go to the subsequent phases of the project, that 80, it may become 100 or it may become 60.
But what is the 80 based on?
That's what I'm saying. As I said in the beginning, that 80 is based on after I have the discussion with the customer, I have the discussion with the business people, and now I am able to understand, what this particular requirement is all about. And we discuss about, the requirement, and then we come to a conclusion where we say that this requirement, it sounds, very, very relevant. Okay. So let's make this requirement as a baseline requirement and size all other requirement in comparison with this requirement.
Okay.
So, I mean, again, it is not very objective, it is very subjective in nature. And in any agile project, whether it is story point or it is ideal days, it goes through, multiple iterations. It goes through, not lot of changes, but it goes through, changes.
Okay.
Right, Satnam?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I can see, a gentleman called Nawaz. One story point could be equal to 1 day, 4 hours, 1 week. Nawaz, as I said that you cannot say that one story point means 1 day of effort or it is 4 hours of effort. It is not. It doesn't work this way. Raj, can you please unmute Nawaz?
Yeah, just a minute. Let me do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nawaz, I have unmuted you. You can speak now.
Yeah, Nawaz.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
I can hear you, Nawaz. So, response to your question, I mean, it doesn't work this way. I mean, we can't say that one story point means 4 hours of effort or 1 week of effort. We don't work this way. I mean, it doesn't work this way in Agile.
So what we mean by one story point then, like when we say that
Okay. Okay. Now, a story point is used for a different purpose in Agile. While we are giving, a plan to the customer, in fact, because you are moving too fast. Because if I start talking about, why we basically use story point, this whole discussion will go on a different tangent. Okay, so what I would basically suggest you, let's park these, questions here only. Otherwise, other people who are basically very new to Agile, they would be completely lost.
Okay, understood.
So, yeah, other people, I mean, it won't be of any use. The information, which I will share, it won't be for any use to those people. Okay.
Sure.
So, sincere apologies, Nawaz. We are like on this slide that there are different methods available for citing the stories or the requirements in a Agile methodology. The second mechanism which we have in Agile is called as ideal days. Okay. Now, before I start talking about ideal days, let me take you through one important thing. How do we do the estimate in an Agile project? Okay, and there is something called as planning poker. Now, planning poker is nothing but a deck of cards. Now, as I was saying that the best estimate, it always comes from the people who will work on those requirements. So, what basically happens that all the people who are part of the project, they go to a conference hall along with the Scrum Master and the product owner or the moderator or the facilitator. Okay. Now, moderator, he reads out a particular requirement. Now everybody in that room has a deck of planning poker cards. Now planning poker card, as you can see on your console also, each card has a number, okay? Starting from, like, if we are following a linear scale, then we will have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or if we are following, you know, the Fibonacci series, it would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. Now everybody has a deck of cards in it. Now moderator, he will read out the requirement, okay? He will read out the requirement, and he will also share the nitty-gritty, the lower level information, the lower level details which are attached with that requirement. Now he will share that information, and he will give some, you know, time to all the people, and those people, maybe they will, you know, do some arithmetic on a piece of paper, or they'll do some scribbling on a piece of paper, and then what they will do, they will take out a card, okay, from the deck of cards, and they will take out a card and they will just keep it on the table. Now all the cards, you know, everybody like was given some 10 minutes or 15 minutes or half an hour. Now after that, you know, the time is over. The cards, you know, which are placed onto the table, immediately those cards will be turned over, and now everybody can see, you know, the estimate. Now in this whole activity, what is happening there is that the person who is sitting next to me, maybe, you know, he has given a story point size of 5 to that requirement, okay. Maybe I have given 10 story point to a particular requirement. Maybe the third person has given maybe, say, 20 to the same very requirement. So what basically we are trying to do, we are trying to come up with a consensus, okay. So the people who are far away from, you know, the majority of the people, majority of the people, the range is, say, 3 to 6. Most of the people have given a story point starting from 3 to 6. But then there are two, you know, developers in that room who think that the size of that requirement, it should not be 3 or it should not be 6, it should be 15. Okay. And in that case, a discussion happens with those people as to why they think that it should be 15 or you know, we arrive at the estimate. When I say estimate, the size of, you know, the requirement, the size of the user story, and this method is called as planning poker. I mean, as you can see on the, it brings together multiple expert opinions. Each estimator is given a deck of planning cards, and as I said, each card has one of the valid estimates. Example is given there: 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 20. For each user story or a theme, the moderator, who is usually the product owner or maybe a business analyst, he reads the description of the requirement. Some discussion happens wherein maybe the developer, they have some queries and they want some clarification. The product owner, he gives the clarification to the development team. Now each estimator, when I say estimator, I'm talking about the people who are part of the development team, they privately select a planning poker card representing his or her agile estimation. Once each estimator has made a selection, cards are simultaneously turned over. Why basically we do that? So that, I mean, I am not biased. Now supposing if I know upfront that the person who is sitting next to me, he has given 10, and when I look at my card, I was thinking that this particular requirement should be sized at 2, I'll immediately think it over and I'll maybe pick up a different card which is close to 10. So it is a very unbiased way of arriving, you know, at an estimate. Now it might happen that during the first cycle, we have a development team and we have 10 development, you know, team members, and majority of them have, you know, numbers which are, you know, kind of a 2 poles apart. Somebody is saying 10, developer number 2 he is saying 20, number 3 is saying maybe 50, number 4 is saying, you know, something else. So we have too many variations. We have too many ranges. In that case, again the discussion happens with the people, maybe why he thinks he should be 20 or 30 or whatever. And this, cycle, it goes on, multiple iteration, takes place, and then it goes on till the time where we have majority of, the people who are thinking more or less about the same story point. Does it make any sense to all of you? If anybody has any doubt on planning poker, I mean, you can type in his query in the QA window, because this is a very, very important thing, and there are few questions in the actual ACP examination. 2 to 3 questions are always there on planning poker. So Satnam is saying that he has already he's already done that, and then I see a comment given by David. David is saying, so story point only prioritize based on size, not importance. No, David, I'm responding to your query. The prioritization is done not based on the story point. The prioritization is done based on the importance of that requirement to the customer. So those requirements which are very, very critical to the customer, the prioritization is done based on that importance, based on that value. The prioritization is never done based on the size of the user story. I mean, we don't do this way that a user story having a story point value of 2 would be addressed, in the beginning, and then we will take a user story which has been estimated at maybe 3 or 4. It is never done that way. It is done based on if it is, the importance for the customer. Okay. So, and there is another method which is called as wideband Delphi. This is another method of doing the sizing in Agile project. The difference between planning poker and the wideband Delphi, there is only one difference, and the difference is in planning poker, I know that in my team, supposing if we have a team of 10 people, I know what was the estimate given by developer number 1 or developer number 2. Everybody knows, the estimate given by all the people. While we are doing wideband Delphi, it is anonymous. Now, I don't know what was, what is the estimate, given by my peer. It is completely anonymous. Everybody is given a paper, okay. The paper, it has, again here, as you can see here, there is a flow given out there. The coordinator presents each expert with a specification and an estimation form. A group meeting, experts discuss estimation issues with the coordinator with each other. Now, the people, when I say expert here, experts are nothing but the development team. They fill out this form, okay, and they basically give this form back to the moderator or the coordinator. And my colleagues, my peers, they do not know what number I mentioned on that piece of paper. So it is basically completely anonymous, okay. And again here we have multiple iterations, because again, like planning poker, in wideband Delphi, it might happen that everybody is coming up with a a number which is nowhere close to what other people have, given. So here also we have multiple iterations, and it keeps on going until and unless we see a consensus, majority of the people think that a particular requirement should be, sized at maybe 5, 6, 7, but not 20. So those outliers, those people who are saying that this particular user story should be sized at 20, but not 3, again the discussion happens with those people as to why they think that it should be 20 and not, not 2 or 3. Okay. So as you can see, the process, experts fill out form anonymously, and then coordinator prepares and distributes a summary of the estimate. Group meeting specifically focusing on the variation in the estimate, and then they fill out the form anonymously, and step number 4 to 6 is, they are again repeated. So again, when we see that there are variations, then the entire process or to everybody. It is a very popular technique which we use in Agile. In fact, it is a variant of a Delphi method, and here it is basically more productive. So we have a estimation method called as Delphi, which is a plain vanilla method. So there is a guy called Barry Boham and John. They originated. They tweaked the earlier Delphi method, and they came up a more refined way of arriving at the size estimate in Agile. Anybody has any doubt? Raj, I think we are done with the slot.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, folks, if you have any question, you can ask your question.